What's up guys, welcome to AnimeKouhai. If you want to help me out, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.
Better think of something for that.
Oh, no, it's not that serious a problem. We sisters use magicules to form the magical bodies you see before you, and they are merely more susceptible to the barriers, is all. But outside of that, Sir Rimuru, we have important matters to discuss.
They didn't see it as important. Very few creatures around Jura would be affected by magicule concentrations like that, Dryads and Treants among them. Thus, since they were the last people Rimuru was seeing today, he offered to continue their talk in a private room that night. The moment Rimuru entered the room, the two spoke in unison.
So what we wanted to talk to you about. We wish to serve the beautiful fairy queen just as our great elder sister does.
You know, now that I think about it, I don't like that fairy queen name. It was overblown, way too fancy for such a teensy little thing. And beautiful? I recalled a smiling Ramiris in my mind. No way, not beautiful. We were picturing totally different things, I was pretty sure about that. If Ramiris was beautiful, you could describe Shizu, the base for my own looks, as a goddess. I'm used to it now, but even I was a bit taken by my own appearance in the past. Benimaru and Shion, who joined Rimuru in here, seemed to agree with him, but Treya and Dorith paid them no mind.
This is not just our opinion, but that of all the Treants. And we hear that, in this very town, Lady Ramiris has built her residence. If so, we can only hope to be of some service to her.
In their uniquely sequential manner of speaking, they begged Rimuru to let them serve Ramiris. If they had already requested a different master, that'd make it hard to ask them to serve Rimuru. Besides, Trainee, their big sister, was already Ramiris's. Rimuru had no real reason to be opposed.
You want to ask her?
What? Is that all right?
The reaction was swift and forceful. So off they went to Ramiris's place, where they found Beretta silently working and Trainee falling over herself to cater to the fairy's whims. Man, Beretta must have it pretty tough. But as Rimuru thought that.
Ah, Lady Ramiris, you are so ravishing. As beautiful as always, and so elegant. The perfect master for us to serve.
Just as before, Treya and Dorith were crying their eyes out over her. Trainee just nodded in response. Rimuru wasn't sure who they were talking about at this point. Elegant was one of the last words he'd ever used to describe her.
Did you hear that?
Ramiris huffed, tossing her head.
Hey, did you hear that? Better not look down on me any longer, you hear?
Man, shut up. Now she was flying around the room, lording it over us as best she could with her size. Ah well, everybody likes a compliment, but judging by this, the answer to the Dryad's question seemed pretty clear.
Well, Ramiris, I think all the Treants want to serve you, too, not just these two.
Huh? But.
Ramiris gave me a hesitant look. I suppose she still felt like a freeloader in my city. So I threw her a life preserver.
How about we have them move into your labyrinth? We moved the Beastman's camp without breaking a sweat, so could it be much harder to move the Trent colony?
Or did the distance involved create an issue? I felt like she said she could build a corridor into the maze from anywhere she wanted.
Are you sure?
She beamed, nodding at me.
In that case, I'll head out as soon as tomorrow. Expanding this labyrinth was a snap when I borrowed some power from my master, and I feel like I've gained some power, too. It'd be kind of fun to make some of the empty floors into a jungle section.
That part about borrowing power from Veldora concerned me a little, but whatever.
But as creatures who live in the forest of Jura, shouldn't they be placed under Sir Rimuru's rule?
Trainee pointed out. She must have been worried about that. But there was eager anticipation written all over her face. Clearly she would love to live with her sisters, and like Rimuru has said before, he had no reason to deny them. Ramiris did rule the labyrinth, a unique space with her living quarters and a zone left to his management. For the parts under her control, perhaps Rimuru should recognize them as extraterritorial from Tempest. Rimuru explained this to them, showing how he wouldn't question their moving here. Her rule over the labyrinth was unstoppable, and besides, it'd be nice for them to be reunited with their original master.
We, the Treants and Dryads, wish to reposition ourselves under the blessed protection of Lady Ramiris. We know it is selfish of us, but would we be able to receive permission for this?
They'd have it, of course. The Trent colony would be placed on floor 95, the level on which the Beastman camp was located. It was the largest floor in land area, a circle with a radius a bit over 3 miles, so we had space to work with. I was intending to build the rest stop on that floor, too, so this worked out well for that, too. People talk about how refreshing a walk in the woods is, and I didn't want our resting post to be this depressing, clinical thing. Moving day went pretty fast. It was more of a moving moment, really. Ramiris just opened a door to the labyrinth at the Dryads location, then moved them right inside. The actual process took a few hours, but all it took was opening a door next to each Trent, so it was pretty straightforward. Now Ramiris had an even greater domain to rule over, and I had a more stable labyrinth to work with. Managing the magicules was much easier now, to say nothing of the air conditioning, and the Dryads couldn't have asked for anything more. Thanks to the high levels of magic concentration in the air, they were all brimming with energy. None of the beastmen living in their temporary quarters had any complaints, either. Dryads are generally pretty chill, usually asleep and looking like plain old trees, and besides, the beastmen would be going back to the Beast Kingdom sooner or later, so they didn't mind having some neighbors for the time being. If anything, they welcomed them, since it made the whole floor more comfortable to live in. They had also extracted a promise from the Dryads to help maintain the labyrinth, or really, the Dryads volunteered to help.
We've had a paradise made for us, so that much would be simple.
Trainee said. Her sisters and the other Dryads all nodded their agreement. With that, we had a small forest village in the labyrinth, along with some very unexpected helpers. Floor 95, being a multiple of 5, was a safe zone. Since we had a bunch of extra floors anyway, I decided to use floors 91 through 94 as a storage site, a greenhouse for gardens and a processing facility. To be more specific, floor 91 would contain storage for metal ore, floor 92, a plant for producing magisteel, floor 93, a garden, and floor 94, another facility for producing honey. There was also free passage all the way to floor 95, which made movement easy, and the save point in the center of 95 included doors back to other floors above and a single, foreboding stairway going down. This was a pretty convenient setup, one that cheerfully ignored all the laws of physics but still seemed to work just fine. By the way, defeating the boss at floor 90 granted you access to stairs down to floor 95 if you somehow made it this far. I was happy to give you a bit of a shortcut. Your final, hellish challenge would begin on floor 96, and before journeying onward, you'd naturally want to rest up and inspect all your equipment. I made sure to put up a door before the stairway down, along with a notice explaining the dangers below, and I also planned to provide an inn and weapon, armor shop near the door. This inn would be connected to the other safe zones in the labyrinth. The doors were all connected, which helped with this setup a lot. The shop, meanwhile, could offer valuable equipment not available anywhere else, all lined up in front for sale. We were unlikely to see much in the way of customers, so I imagined the shop would be more of a hobby of mine than anything else. I fantasized about putting some of my own creations in the shop down there as I decided to discuss my idea with Meowmile. So after talking to monster species all day in the audience room, I spent much of the evening helping Ramiris and her new subjects with their move. This new floor we built would eventually blossom into a forested city of its own. We called it Labyrinth City, a final oasis for those who made it through the dungeon, a fantastic town that granted visitors more power than they ever thought possible. But at that time, I hadn't imagined that far down the line yet. My itinerary for the following day involved meeting with the relatively stronger species, including the biggest factions in my recently conquered territory. Guess most of them will be in the observing camp again, I thought, only to notice a commotion in front of my audience chamber. A couple of different factions were having a verbal argument. Shuna was staring at them, scowling, while Xian's eyes were flashing with barely repressed rage. Hoo boy, hopefully this all works out. These were the Bovoids and Equinoids. They had each brought along about a dozen warriors, currently attempting to intimidate one another. It turns out they didn't get along too well, in fact, they had been at war for over a century. They were fighting to see who would get an audience with me first. I guess they thought being granted my protection ahead of their rival would give them a leg up, but I really didn't want to get involved. It was all just an annoyance to me. The two races stood by the door, keeping each other at bay. The situation looked ready to devolve into physical combat at any moment, and given their positions high up the Forest of Jura food chain, they were both intimidating presences. A magic born with bullhorn spoke to me first.
Ah, the Demon Lord. If you want a stout ally in battle, turn to us first. Let the Bovoids join your side, and you'll get to strut around the forest with authority. And once we wipe out those wimpy equinoids once and for all, you won't find any race in the forest to defy us.
He certainly was bold, making this proclamation to me without a hint of fear, and he had the strength to back it up. He had more magical energy to him than the ogres and lizard men I first ran into, that's for sure. Conservatively, I'd say there were a few rankers in the group. You'd need that kind of force to wage a 100-year war, and in terms of pure fighting ability, they may have been the best the forest of Jura had to offer. But before I could answer, one of the equinoids erupted in anger.
Fool! Any demon lord would have the perception to see that pairing with the equinoids is clearly the decision to make. We'll destroy any race who dares to claim otherwise, from those Bovoids on down.
Pretty harsh words. These guys sure were hot-headed, and exhausting. At least the rabbit folk were smart enough not to be fooled by my slime exterior. But, hold on. Yes, they were exhausting, but the moment I laid eyes upon them, I came up with an idea. What labyrinth was complete, after all, without a minotaur or two? Those creatures were celebrated in Greek mythology, hailed as the stuff of legend, but in the early 20th century, when people discovered the ancient temple of Knossos in Crete, they found a complex maze of passages, along with an underground section that suggested the labyrinth really existed. Maybe there wasn't a bull-headed maze guardian inside, but there were many bull-themed frescoes and such inside. Even back then, labyrinths and minotaurs went hand in hand with each other.
That's it for this video, guys. Thank you for always watching my videos and supporting my channel. Shout out to Shukran, Lloyd Luardo, Otis DISCLAIMER 420, John Mardi Malaluan, Dhruv Goshi, Cedric Asio, Rosie Gaming, Shinigami, John Karusarido, and last but not the least, shout out to Vinxie TV. I'll see you guys in the next video.